television event.
Because there's a major issue with the fragmentation of the private sector. So that when there are issues to tackle, you'll be hearing, people going in different directions. And that is to the advantage of the bureaucracy. They say, okay, these people are not speaking with one voice, so we could as well do what we want to do. So it is very important that we have a platform that can speak effectively for the private sector. Right now, a lot of businesses are going through the challenges that has arisen from the foreign exchange policy of the CBN. There is no formidable voice against this issue. Because if you are a formidable voice, this is not a policy that should last for more than 1 week. Because it has created a lot of disruptions in the economy. But somehow, there's no way to communicate this, either to the president, to the vice president, or even to the National Assembly. Even as we speak, the National Assembly has not made a single pronouncement on such a very important matter. So these are the issues that we have when there is no formidable platform for engagement of the lawmakers. It is very critical. Then, please go back to then there's the issue of the moral authority for effective oversight. Who he will come to equity should come with clean hands. Anybody that wants to do an oversight must do an oversight with dignity and with integrity. The perception that the populace have about issues of oversight of the National Assembly is not a very good one. So we expect that the 8th Assembly should see a way to bring some dignity to the process so that it can be more respected. And that way they can deliver better value to the citizens and to the populace. Because how can you do an effective oversight if you already compromise yourself? You remember the issue of the Capital Market Committee, the House of Rep versus Mrs. Aruma Ote. There was a power probe by Farouk Lawan. Oh, subsidy probe by Farouk Lawan. There, all sorts of things happen. And that is the ones that come to the open. For everyone that comes to the open, there are maybe 10 others that did not come to the open. So the integrity of oversight is very, very important. Next slide. Then some essential bills. I need to rush now. We have a number of bills. This is not exhaustive, but the one that is most striking is the petroleum industry bill. This bill was first introduced in 2003. As we speak, the bill has not actually been passed. And it's a very critical bill for the reform of oil and gas sector. And we have similar things like that with the railway system. It took the Lagos State almost 4 or 5 years to get some kind of permission to be able to begin to do something on the rail system in Lagos State. That should not be. So if we have proper engagement, these are the kind of issues that we can get the legislature to begin to accelerate. We also have the postal sector bill. This was alluded to in some of the last presentations, where the Nigerian Postal Service is a regulator, is also an operator. And we have all sorts of anomalies in so many legislations that we need to. Next slide, please. Then budget and appropriation, I've talked about that, but next slide. This is perhaps the most important. We are talking about the resources of the country. It needs to be appropriated properly. And it is the responsibility of the National Assembly to ensure proper appropriation of the resources of this country in line with the Constitution. Next slide, please. Well, the power of appropriation is the same thing, but let me just make this point on this slide. There are so many expenditures taking place without appropriation. So much impunity has taken place and perhaps still taking place, even under the current dispensation. For instance, the subsidy appropriation this year was 200 billion naira for PMS, 91.03 billion naira for kerosene. Are we sure that we have not exceeded this? I'm sure in the first 4 months of the year, this subsidy had been exhausted. And we have been funding the importation of petroleum products between then and now. Where is the money coming from? These are critical questions. So we need to tidy up the process. Okay, I'm told that my time is up. Well, the issue of the budget delays, how it is hurting the economy. Next slide, please, very quickly. Well, this is an analysis of the effect of delays on budget. Next slide. Budgetary lags, approval, submission lags, all the delays that we and the lags and some international best practice in the way budget should be promoted. This is a comparative analysis timelines between Nigeria and other countries. Next slide. Implementation issues with the budget. Next slide. Framework for effective legislation. Move on. Well, this is important. Constitutional review. We should have a time frame for budget presentation, National Assembly consideration, presidential approval, signature, release. There has to be a time frame for all of this. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Budget structure. This is also very important. I want to suggest at this point that we should scrap what they call the service-wide vote. It is an opaque provision, and sometimes it's as high as 1 trillion naira annually in the budget. Although listening to the Vice President, I'm sure this kind of thing will not happen under this administration. Next slide, please. Now, the private sector role has a major role to play. I think I've mentioned that we need to build a strong coalition to be able to engage and interface with the national. Then the concept of lobbying, we need to describe and understand what lobbying means in the context of the Nigerian democracy. The National Assembly needs to educate us. If you want to lobby the National Assembly, what does it take and how do we proceed? Well, this is just to show the capacity of the US Congress, the strength they have to build capacity to support the legislature in terms of the US Library of Congress, Congressional Research Office, and Congressional Budget. They are well-funded, very solid institutions to support the legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that background presentation. Your Excellency, the Deputy Speaker, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we do have a session on the National Assembly and legislative framework in session. We do thank you very much for the background presentation. I think a lot has been said to make us fully understand the importance of the National Assembly and the work that is needed to be done by the National Assembly to address issues of concern to the Nigerian economy, but also businesses in the country. We do have, the panel has already been introduced, and the Senate President is not here, but I think we do have very effective representation, and I say that because a lot of us who understand the importance of the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Larson, understand that he is very key to the legislative business of the House of Representatives, but as well the National Assembly. He is chairman of the Committee of the Whole of the House of Representatives. And for a lot of us who work on legislative issues, we understand that he is really the most important person when it comes to the work of the committees of the National Assembly, taking reports and indeed pushing forward any legislative agenda. And the background presentation that was given by Muda really makes the point that there is an important need for collaboration between the legislature and different stakeholders and interests. A lot of times I think that the challenge of understanding the National Assembly means that sometimes they are on the firing line in terms of people's perception of what they do, right from their constituents, but also in terms of the media. And because they are on the firing line and sometimes get demonized, it means that they sometimes also are a little bit reluctant to exercise the full powers that they possess. And I think that we have a responsibility to challenge them, to show the powers that they have. And this session really is intent on bringing out from the panelists, but I guess also from participants, the sort of expectations that we have of the National Assembly. And I think unless we really challenge the National Assembly to meet with the expectations that we have of it, for as long as we don't do that, then for so long will we not get the best that we can from out of them. So I think we really are very privileged that we do have the Deputy Speaker here with us. In addition, he's also the chairman of the ad hoc committee on the review of the Constitution, which is one of the key committees of the National Assembly. When we talk about the business environment, beyond the laws that need to be updated, need to be reviewed, and need to be made to be responsive to the daily experiences that we have as business, we also know that the Constitution exists, and for a lot of us who are concerned about the Land Use Act, which is a part of the Constitution, it is important for us to also get the National Assembly to respond to the challenges of the implementation of the Land Use Act, which is part of the functions of the Committee on Constitution Review. And I hope, like Muda mentioned, all of this is sequenced and expected to